I never imagined my life would change on such an ordinary afternoon. My name is Run Shu, son of a merchant family long forgotten by the capital, and I had just returned from years of wandering city to city, selling anything that kept rice in my bowl, clothes in one season, food in another, trinkets when the market demanded it. My hands were calloused, my back stiff from travel, and my heart was tired. I had long given up on love. For a man like me, loving another man in a world where expectations pressed heavily on lineage and heirs, the safest choice was silence. But fate rarely cares for safety. That day, I carried a basket of dried herbs strapped to my back, the late summer sun warming the stone roads of the capital. I had just completed my final errand and intended to return to my small rented room in the southern district. The city was bustling. Vendors called out their wares, children chased each other through narrow alleys, and noble carriages rolled by, guarded and gleaming. I kept my head down. My life had always been about blending into the crowd, not standing out. Until they appeared. The twin princesses of the empire, Lao Xixing and Hao Xixing, only 12 summers old, yet the most mischievous sparks in the imperial family, strolled through the capital streets like ordinary children on festival day. No chariots, no fanfare, only two identical figures in pale silk robes, ribbons tied neatly in their glossy black hair. Their eyes darted from person to person as though they were searching for hidden treasure. I noticed them only because the crowd reacted, bowing, whispering, some even pushing their daughters forward in hopes of being noticed. But the twins ignored them all. Instead, they rubbed their chins dramatically, as though contemplating a painting they couldn't quite interpret. "Not her," Lausie murmured, her little brows furrowing. "Not her either," Hausie added, mirroring her sister. They passed ministers, noble daughters, even elegant widows. None satisfied their gaze. A few parents shouted desperately, "Look at my daughter, your highnesses." But the girls didn't so much as glance back. And then, God's curse me, their eyes locked on me. My step faltered. I had been balancing my basket carefully, making my way through the street. Their gaze felt like a torch's flame pressed against my skin. I lowered my head quickly, hoping they'd turn away. But instead, their identical lips curled into identical mischievous smiles. "That one," said Lausie. "Yes, that one," Hausie agreed. I froze. Me? Surely not. Perhaps there was someone behind me. I glanced over my shoulder. Only an elderly fishmonger adjusting his stall. The next moment, the crowd erupted into gasps. I felt the shift in the air as heads turned toward me. Fingers pointed. My heart slammed painfully against my ribs. He's a man," someone exclaimed. "Surely the princess's jest," another muttered. But the twins marched directly toward me, their silk slippers whispering against the stone. My mouth went dry. I wanted to vanish into the earth. Instead, I stood rooted to the spot as they stopped before me, hands on their tiny hips, eyes glittering with delight. "Daddy needs a wife," Lausie declared boldly, her voice carrying far too clearly for my comfort. "And it wouldn't be a bad idea to have two daddies." The crowd went silent. Utterly, painfully silent. I blinked at them, convinced I had misheard. Excuse me?" My voice cracked like a boy's. Hausie leaned closer, whispering as though sharing a secret, though half the capital could hear. "You look nice. Daddy would like you." My basket slipped from my hands, herbs spilling across the ground. I think you must be mistaken. Surely His Majesty." "No mistake," Lausie interrupted, her chin tilted high. "We choose you." A ripple of murmurs spread through the crowd. Noble women gasped, guards stiffened, and merchants leaned forward eagerly, as if they had just witnessed a phoenix land in the marketplace. I felt blood drain from my face. The days following were a blur. I was summoned to the palace. Summoned. Me, Renshu, a mere commoner. The guards arrived at my door before dawn, their polished armor gleaming, their expressions unreadable. My neighbors peeked out of their windows, whispering as though I were already condemned. "By order of their highnesses, the princesses Lao Xixing and Hao Xixing," the captain announced, "you are requested to appear before His Imperial Majesty." I barely remembered walking through the towering palace gates, my legs trembling with every step. The grand halls swallowed me whole, their painted ceilings stretching into eternity. Incense burned in golden braziers, and eunuchs in neat rows bowed silently as I passed. I felt like a sparrow lost in a sea of dragons. And then I saw him. The Emperor Guozhenxing, tall, broad-shouldered, his black robes embroidered with golden dragons that seemed alive in the flickering torchlight. His hair was long, tied with a jade crown, his jaw sharp, his gaze steady. 8 years of widowerhood had etched faint shadows under his eyes, yet he radiated a power that made my knees weak. I dropped to the floor instantly, forehead pressing the cold tiles. "Your Majesty, forgive me. I did not seek this." "Rise," his voice commanded, deep and smooth as a river. Reluctantly, I obeyed, though my head remained bowed. The twins clung to either of his arms, grinning. "Daddy, we found him." The Emperor's gaze swept over me, lingering just a moment too long. My stomach twisted. I dared not meet his eyes, but I felt their weight, heavy, appraising, almost curious. "This man." His tone was unreadable. "Yes," the twins chimed. "He is perfect." I opened my mouth to protest, but the Emperor raised a hand. "Enough. Leave us." The twins pouted, reluctant, but obeyed, skipping off with suspiciously gleeful expressions. The hall grew still. Only the Emperor and I remained. Slowly, he descended the steps of the dragon throne, each movement controlled, deliberate. My breath caught when he stopped a mere arm's length away. His scent was faint yet distinct, sandalwood and steel. "Runshu," he said, my name startlingly intimate on his lips. "You did not seek this, yet my daughters have chosen you." "Your Majesty, I am unworthy," I stammered. "I am but a humble merchant's son." And yet, his eyes narrowed slightly, studying me with unsettling intensity. "There is something in you that drew their gaze. Children's hearts are rarely wrong." I swallowed hard, daring at last to glance up. Our eyes met. For a moment, time stilled. His gaze wasn't cold or dismissive, as I had feared. It was sharp, yes, but behind it lingered something else, something I couldn't name. Interest? Curiosity? Or perhaps loneliness? My chest tightened unexpectedly. "I cannot dismiss their choice," he said at last. "Nor do I wish to." My knees nearly gave way. Did the Emperor just? No, impossible. Surely he only meant to humor his daughters. But when his lips curved, ever so faintly, into the ghost of a smile, I realized with horror and exhilaration both, he meant it. Thus began the strangest chapter of my life. The capital buzzed with rumors, ministers protested in hushed voices, and noble daughters wept in private chambers. And me? I was thrust into the gilded cage of the palace, caught between twin girls who pushed me shamelessly toward their father, an emperor who played a dangerous game of restraint and temptation, and a heart that refused to remain silent any longer. I had always believed love would never be mine, but as the days unfolded, I discovered that love, like fate, arrives when least expected, and once it does, it refuses to let go. And it all began with two mischievous girls who decided their father deserved not just a wife, but a second husband. The palace is not a home. It is a labyrinth. That was the first thing I realized after being installed, as the eunuchs put it, into a modest yet luxurious wing on the eastern side of the inner court. Its corridors stretched endlessly, filled with watchful eyes, maids bowing, guards with spears, courtiers pretending not to notice me while whispering the moment I passed. I hated it. I was used to narrow inns, noisy markets, the freedom to choose my own path. Here, every step echoed against marble floors, reminding me that I did not belong. But the twins? They thought otherwise. Every morning, before the sun had fully risen, they came bounding into my chambers without warning. I would barely be dressed before they tugged at my sleeves, insisting I accompany them to breakfast. "Daddy eats alone too much," Housie would say, her little lips pouting as she latched onto my hand. "You should sit next to him," Lousie added, eyes sparkling with mischief. "He'll like it." And like a fool, I allowed them to drag me along. The first time I sat across from the Emperor at breakfast, my hands trembled so much I nearly spilled my tea. He wore his casual robe, deep navy with silver embroidery, his hair untied for once, falling loose over his shoulders. The sight of him without the heavy crown, without the dragon robe, was dangerous. He looked less like a distant ruler and more like a man whose eyes flickered up at me now and then, sharp enough to slice through my carefully constructed composure. The twins whispered behind their sleeves, giggling as though orchestrating a secret play. "You don't eat." His voice cut through the silence suddenly. I startled, chopsticks clattering. I do, Your Majesty." "Then eat." His tone carried no impatience, but the command made my pulse jump. "Yes, Your Majesty." I lowered my gaze and shoveled a bite of rice into my mouth. My hands betrayed me, trembling again. I had faced angry merchants, cruel guards, even thieves on the road. None of them made me feel as helpless as the quiet weight of this man's attention. The twins nudged each other knowingly, as though satisfied. Days passed in a strange rhythm. The ministers grew restless. Rumors reached even my ears. The emperor entertains a man in the inner court? An insult to tradition. What will happen to the royal bloodline? I told myself not to care. After all, this was temporary. A child's whim. Surely His Majesty would grow tired of it soon. And yet he didn't. Instead, he allowed me to remain. He summoned me to dine. He walked with me through the gardens, his daughters skipping ahead while we followed in a silence that felt charged. "Do you always keep your eyes lowered?" he asked once, when the twins ran off chasing dragonflies. I hesitated. "It feels safer." "Safer?" His brow arched. "Yes, Your Majesty." A faint curve touched his lips. "But I do not want you to feel safe. I want you to feel seen." The words struck deeper than I expected. My heart stuttered, and for the first time, I dared to meet his gaze. His eyes were not cold, they were heavy with something else, loneliness perhaps, or desire carefully locked away. I looked away too quickly, afraid of drowning in it. One evening, the twins insisted I read them a bedtime story in their chambers. They nestled under silken blankets, eyes half closed as I spun tales from my travels, about mountain spirits, hidden rivers, merchants who tricked themselves instead of their customers. Their laughter filled the room until it softened into yawns. When both finally drifted off, I set the book aside, rising quietly. And that was when I saw him. The emperor leaned against the doorway, arms folded across his chest, watching. His robe was dark red, the lantern light flickering across his sharp features. I bowed instinctively. "Your Majesty." "Stay." His voice was low. He stepped inside, glancing at his daughter's peaceful forms before turning his gaze on me. "They adore you." I do not know why." "Because you are kind," he said simply. Then, after a pause, "and because you do not treat them as burdens. Even I sometimes fail at that." His honesty startled me. My chest ached at the weariness in his tone. Slowly, I straightened, daring to ask, "Does Your Majesty still grieve her?" The silence that followed was heavy. His wife, their mother, the late Empress, had died 8 years ago. No one spoke of her openly. His jaw tightened. Every day. But the twins deserve more than my grief. I swallowed. Then perhaps they were right. To seek someone for you. His eyes caught mine. The air thickened. For a heartbeat, I felt he might reach for me. His hand twitched at his side. My breath caught. But then he turned sharply, breaking the moment. "Rest, Renshu." His tone was clipped, distant again. "Do not let them tire you." And just like that, he was gone, leaving me trembling in the half-dark, wondering if I had imagined the heat in his gaze. That night, I could not sleep. I turned over his words again and again, until dawn's first light crept through my windows. The twins wanted us together. The emperor seemed tempted. And me, I was already falling. Falling for a man I had no right to love. A man who wore dragons on his chest and carried the weight of an empire. It was foolish, dangerous, impossible. And yet when the memory of his voice whispering, "I want you to feel seen," drifted back, my heart betrayed me, thundering in my chest with reckless hope. Life in the palace was a test of endurance. Not against hardship, but against temptation. Every glance from him, every shared silence, was like a spark on dry grass. I kept telling myself, resist. Do not want what you cannot have. But the human heart is a traitor, and mine betrayed me every day. The twins only made things worse. One morning, they barged into my chambers again, faces flushed with excitement. "Renshu," Housey squealed, grabbing my wrist. "You must come quickly." I nearly spilled my tea. "What is it now?" "Daddy is in the training grounds," Lousy declared proudly. "He is practicing with the generals. You must see." I groaned. Why would I intrude upon His Majesty's training? They ignored me entirely, tugging me down corridors until the sound of clashing swords filled the air. When we slipped into the courtyard, my breath hitched. The emperor stood at the center, blade in hand, sparring with 3 generals at once. His robe sleeves tied back, sweat glistening along his jaw, his movements as fluid as a predator's. Every strike was precise, every parry effortless. I shouldn't have stared. I knew better. But the sight of him, strong, focused, deadly, sent heat curling low in my stomach. The twins leaned close, whispering in unison, "He looks good, doesn't he?" My face flamed. Hush. But it was too late. The emperor had noticed me. His blade stilled, and his gaze found mine across the courtyard. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. Then, with deliberate calm, he lowered his sword and dismissed the generals. When he strode toward me, I considered fleeing. But the twins pinned me in place with their triumphant grins. "You watch me," he said simply, his voice low enough for only me to hear. I swallowed. "Your Majesty, I was brought here against my will. By two little tyrants." His lips twitched faintly. "Exactly so." I tried to sound dry, but my pulse betrayed me. His eyes lingered on me longer than propriety allowed. Then he leaned close, his breath brushing my ear. "Do not let them drag you anywhere you do not wish to be, Renshu." The sound of my name on his tongue was more dangerous than any blade. I felt my knees weaken. And yet, before I could respond, the twins squealed, interrupting. "Daddy, you must let Renshu spar with you." "What?" My protest nearly cracked the heavens. But His Majesty chuckled softly, a rare, intoxicating sound. "Perhaps another time." His gaze slid to mine, unreadable. "If he dares." I burned from head to toe. By evening, the rumors spread faster than wildfire. Servants whispered, "The Emperor trains while being watched by his chosen? Does His Majesty favor him?" I tried to ignore them. But then came the banquet. A feast was held to honor a visiting governor. I had no reason to be there, until the twins insisted again. "You must sit with us. Daddy will be lonely without you." I nearly fainted when eunuchs escorted me to the hall. Nobles' daughters lined the tables, adorned in silk and jewels, eyes sharp with ambition. Ministers sat stiffly, fans hiding their disdain. And there, on the dragon throne, sat the emperor. When he saw me, his expression flickered, subtle but real. He gestured, and to my horror, a eunuch guided me to a seat dangerously close to his. The feast began. Music swelled, dancers twirled, cups overflowed with wine. Yet the only thing I felt was the weight of stares boring into me. One young nobleman, son of a minister, leaned across the table, smirking. "So this is the man who has captured His Majesty's favor?" His tone dripped with disdain. My ears burned. "You are mistaken." "Oh." His smile sharpened. "Then why does His Majesty watch you instead of the performance?" I froze. Slowly, I dared to glance at the throne. And indeed, his gaze was fixed not on the dancers, not on the courtiers, but on me. Steady, unashamed. The nobleman laughed cruelly. "A merchant's son to rival noble daughters? Truly, the palace has changed." Before I could reply, a cold voice sliced through the hall. "Enough." The emperor's tone silenced everyone instantly. He did not raise his voice, yet the air itself seemed to bow. His gaze locked on the nobleman. "Insult him again, and you insult me." Gasps rippled. My heart pounded so violently I thought I might collapse. The nobleman turned pale, stammering apologies. And me? I sat frozen, shame and heat, and something far more dangerous flooding through me. When the banquet ended, and the ministers scattered like frightened crows, the emperor did not dismiss me. Instead, he beckoned me to follow. He led me through quiet corridors until we reached the moon pavilion, its lanterns glowing soft against the night. The twins, mercifully, were nowhere in sight. I stood awkwardly, unsure why he had brought me here. "Do you know," he said suddenly, his back to me, "how long it has been since someone defied a minister for me?" I blinked. "Your Majesty?" "Too long." He turned, eyes fierce in the lamplight. "You do not beg for favor, Renshu. You do not flatter. And yet they all watch you as if you threaten them." I never wanted to threaten anyone." "I know." He stepped closer, his presence overwhelming. "That is why you do." I opened my mouth, but the words tangled in my throat. He was too near. The faint scent of sandalwood clung to his robe, and the heat of his body made my own shiver. Then his hand lifted, hesitant, almost trembling, before brushing against my cheek. I froze. My breath stilled. His touch was warm, calloused, unbearably gentle. My chest clenched painfully. "Your Majesty," I whispered, half plea, half warning. He leaned closer. Our foreheads nearly touched. His lips hovered just a breath away. My heart screamed, yes. But suddenly, "Daddy!" "Renshu!" The twins' voices shattered the moment. We sprang apart as they burst into the pavilion, holding a tray of sweets they had stolen from the banquet. Oblivious, they plopped between us, shoving candied plums into our hands. The emperor cleared his throat, masking his expression with imperial calm. I, meanwhile, thought I might die of frustration. But as the twins chattered happily, I dared a glance at him. And what I saw made my breath catch, a flicker of longing in his eyes, quickly hidden. I knew then. It was not just me. He wanted this too. That night, I lay awake in my bed, lips tingling from a kiss that had almost been, a kiss stolen by two little devils who thought they were helping. And for the first time, I allowed myself to dream, not of impossible things, but of a possibility. Of love. The palace at night is a different world. By day, it thrums with protocol, courtiers, endless ceremonies. But at night, silence falls, and the lanterns burn soft as stars. The air itself feels heavy with secrets. That was when I saw him most. The twins had taken to forgetting their bedtime. They would drag me into their chambers for stories, then vanish under the pretense of needing water or chasing shadows. More than once, I caught them peeking from behind screens as though waiting for something to happen. It was maddening. It was dangerous. It was working. One evening, after a particularly long day of listening to ministers squabble, I returned to my chambers only to find the twins already there, perched on my bed. "You're late," Lousy said with a pout. "Very late," Housey echoed. "Daddy will be upset." I rubbed my temples. "Your father has the empire to govern. He will not notice my absence." The girls exchanged identical grins. "He notices," they chimed together, sing-song. Before I could demand what they meant, a eunuch arrived, bowing deeply. "His Majesty requests Renshu's presence in the orchid garden." My heart lurched. The orchid garden was private, reserved for only the emperor and his closest kin. Why summon me there, of all places? The twins pushed me toward the door, whispering, "Don't be shy." I wanted to throttle them. Instead, I obeyed. The orchid garden was bathed in lantern light, moonlight painting the blossoms silver. The air was sweet, heady with the scent of night orchids. And there he stood, waiting. He wore a plain black robe tonight, his crown absent, his hair loose around his shoulders. A man, not an emperor. My chest tightened. "Your Majesty," I whispered, bowing. "Renshu." His voice was quiet, low. "Come closer." I obeyed, each step unsteady. When I stopped before him, he studied me silently. The garden hummed with the chirp of crickets, but otherwise, the world held its breath. Finally, he said, "Do you know how long it has been since I have stood here with another?" I shook my head. 8 years, he murmured. His gaze flicked to the orchids, then back to me. "Since she died." My throat tightened. I am sorry." He stepped closer, so near I could see the faint scar on his jaw, the lines of weariness under his eyes. The twins, they were children when she left. They'd barely remember her face. But they remember her laughter. They miss what I cannot give them. I dared to whisper. "And so they chose me." His lips curved faintly. "Yes. Bold little creatures." I thought it was nonsense at first. A whim. But his eyes softened, and something in his voice broke. "I find myself unable to let you go." The words struck me like thunder. My heart stuttered, then raced wildly. I wanted to deny it, to protect myself. But when he reached up, slow, hesitant, his fingers brushing my cheek, I melted. "Your Majesty." My protest was weak, trembling. "Say my name," he whispered. I swallowed hard. "Guozenshing." His breath caught. Then his lips found mine. The world shattered into heat. His mouth was firm, hungry, yet tender all at once. My hands, unthinking, clutched at his robe. His arms wrapped around me, pulling me flush against him. I gasped, and he deepened the kiss, tongue brushing mine with a sweetness that burned hotter than fire. I had kissed men before, in stolen shadows, fleeting and fearful. But this was different. This was an emperor, a father, a man who carried the empire on his shoulders, trembling against me as though I were the one who could break him. When at last he pulled back, both of us were breathless. His forehead pressed to mine, his voice hoarse. "Tell me to stop, Renshu. If you do, I will." I shook my head, chest heaving. "I cannot." His lips crashed against mine again. We stumbled into the pavilion, lanterns swaying as his hands cupped my face, my waist, pulling me close. Every kiss was desperate, a battle between restraint and need. My fingers tangled in his loose hair, and when he groaned softly into my mouth, I nearly lost all sense. "Guozen," I whispered against his lips. "Again," he breathed. "Say it again." "Guozenshing." His mouth found my throat, kissing, nipping, leaving fire in his wake. I gasped, clinging to him. For a man who ruled armies, he trembled like one starved. "Do you know," he murmured against my skin, "how dangerous you are to me?" I laughed shakily. "I should be asking you that." And then, of course, "Daddy." "Renshu." We froze. The twins' voices carried through the garden, closer and closer. Panic surged through me, but the emperor only sighed, forehead dropping to my shoulder. "They will be the death of me," he muttered. I shoved at his chest, scandalized. We cannot, what if they? Too late. The girls rounded the corner, clutching pastries they had stolen from the kitchens. Their eyes went wide when they saw us, cheeks splitting into wicked grins. Oh, they chorused. Heat flooded my face. It's not. Finally, Lousy squealed, clapping her hands. Took you long enough, Housey added smugly. The Emperor cleared his throat, straightening with imperial composure that only half-masked his flushed cheeks. You should be in bed. We couldn't sleep, they sang in unison, clearly lying. I covered my face with my hands. My life was ruined. But when I peeked between my fingers, I caught him looking at me. Not with regret, but with something deeper, softer. His lips curved in the faintest of smiles. And despite my mortification, my heart swelled. That night, when I returned to my chambers, my lips still tingled, my body still ached with longing. Sleep was impossible. I paced, whispered curses at the twins, then pressed trembling fingers to my mouth, reliving every stolen kiss. It was madness. It was dangerous. It was real. And I knew, with terrifying certainty, that I would never escape him now. The palace air felt heavy the following days, charged with expectation. Servants whispered in corners, ministers glanced furtively at one another during morning court, and the twins seemed to strut about with an impish pride, as though they alone knew the fate of the empire. And perhaps they did, because every step I took now, every glance, every stolen word exchanged with the emperor, was being measured by the capital, as though my heart itself had become the kingdom's entertainment. Yet inside me, the storm was real. Not whispers, not gossip, but longing, fire, and the terrifying weight of being chosen. It began with jealousy. The emperor had granted an audience to Lady Xian, daughter of one of his war ministers. She was known for her grace and her painted verses, and when I heard of it, something inside me twisted. I told myself it was nothing. He was a ruler. Audiences with noble daughters were as natural as morning court. But when I passed the lotus pond that night and saw her kneeling before him, her delicate hands cupping a string pipa as she sang a verse in the moonlight, I froze. And worse, I saw him smile. Not the usual thin, dutiful smile of a ruler, but a softened curve that lit his face. My chest ached. I turned to leave quietly, not daring to interrupt, but a hand caught my sleeve. Lausishings, her sharp little whisper. Where are you going, Rinshu? Daddy's smile isn't for her. It's for you. Hausishing, perched by the pond steps like a little fox, grinned. Stay. Watch. You'll see. But my pride couldn't bear it. My heart raced with a sour, unnameable feeling, and I tugged free. This is his world. I shouldn't intrude. I walked away. That night, I could not sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Lady Xian's gentle face, the curve of her song, the smile that touched the emperor's lips. He is a ruler. He belongs to no one, least of all to me. But then, a knock at my chamber door. When I slid it open, the emperor himself stood there, lantern light spilling over his features. Why did you leave? His voice was low, almost stern, but beneath it a tremor. I swallowed. It was not my place to stay. Your place, his hand shot out, gripping my wrist. Do you not yet understand? You are my place. The lantern wavered between us as my breath caught. His eyes burned, fierce and unguarded, no trace of the emperor, only a man whose heart was raw. Before I could respond, he pulled me into the chamber, and the door closed with a hushed thud. What followed was a storm. His lips crashed against mine, not like the tender brush at the festival, but hungry, demanding, full of a need that shook me to my core. I gasped against him, but his hands cupped my face, his thumb pressing the hollow of my jaw as if to claim me. Do you think I smiled for her? His breath burned hot against my mouth. I smiled because I thought of you, of your foolish, jealous eyes peeking from the shadows. My cheeks flamed. I was not. You were, he cut me off, pressing me back against the bedpost. And heaven help me, I was glad. Because it means you want me too. His words shattered me. My heart, fragile, cautious, gave way. I kissed him back. Harder. Fiercer. As though 8 years of his loneliness and all my years of searching had collided in this single night. Our robes tangled, silk sliding to the floor. His skin was hot beneath my hands, the strong line of his shoulders trembling under my touch. When his lips trailed down my throat, my knees buckled, and he held me up as though I were both precious and necessary. Renshu, his voice was a hoarse whisper against my collarbone. Be mine, not by decree, not by the twins' game, but because your heart wills it. My hands gripped his back, nails biting into his flesh. I already am. And the night consumed us. Bodies pressed, lips fevered, sighs breaking the silence, until we lay spent, skin against skin, breath mingling in the candle's last flicker. For the first time, I felt not like an intruder in the palace, not like a chosen spectacle, but like his. Morning came with sunlight streaming across the silk sheets. I stirred to find him watching me, his usually commanding eyes softened. "You are trouble," he murmured. I laughed softly. "So are you." A knock at the door. Then the twins barged in without hesitation, their eyes widening at the sight of us in bed. Lousy squealed. "We knew it." Housie clapped her hands. "Finally, we have two daddies now." The emperor groaned, covering his face with his hand. I buried mine under the blanket, mortified, but the twins only twirled around, delighted. "Does this mean Runshu will stay forever?" they asked in unison. The emperor's hand slid over mine under the blanket, gripping firmly. His answer was calm, steady. "Yes, forever." The ministers protested, of course. A man as consort? A commoner? Scandal. But the emperor's will was iron. My daughters chose with unclouded hearts. And so did I. Let heaven strike me if this is not right. And none dared argue further. Years later, when the lotus pond bloomed again, I would often sit there with the twins, now grown, radiant young women, and they would tease me endlessly. "Remember the day we pointed at you in the street? How you looked so shocked, you nearly dropped your basket." And I would laugh, shaking my head. Because that day, the day two mischievous daughters searched for a wife, but instead gave me a husband, had changed everything. And every night, when the palace quieted and the stars shone over the tiled roofs, the emperor would hold me close, his voice murmuring against my ear. Not consort, not companion, mine. And I, with a heart no longer empty, no longer wandering, would whisper back, "Yours, always." The twins, the emperor, and I, bound not by tradition, but by choice, by love, and by a rare, unpredictable fate. And thus, beneath the porcelain sky of the capital, our story was written.